Towards the end of this session. Now I invite Dr. Lalit Verma. Dr. Lalit Verma is the past president of AIOS and president of APAO Congress 2025. He is the Secretary General, South Asian Academy of Ophthalmology and Director, Vitreoretina Services Center for Sight, New Delhi. Uh, he was the General Secretary of AIOS, Chairman Scientific Committee of AIOS, and Chief Organizing Secretary of 15th and 16th SIO Conference. Over to you, sir. Today he'll be talking about vitrectomy in PCV.
Okay. Thanks a lot, and thanks to AIS Scientific Committee, Dr. Namrata Sharma, for conceiving this unique program that she does AIS Scientific Committee session in all the state level annual conferences. And thanks to KSS also for agreeing to host this program. So, as Namrata has already said, APAO is a big event, and all of you should try to come there. This is being held in Yashobhumi, one of the largest convention center which Asia, in the largest in the Asia, and this event will be part of 83rd celebrations of AIOC and 40th APO conference. And all of you should try to come. In case of difficulty, you can directly contact also, either me or Namrata. So we'll be talking of IPCV primarily. IPCV is one pathology which is actually not ARMD, which is a different pathology because you do not get colloid bodies of drusen in this. And most of the times, if media is clear, you tend to do monotherapy today with anti-VEGF agents because previously we used to do PDT with vertiporfin, but vertiporfin is now not easily available. So primarily treatment is on anti-VEGF monotherapy, either with aflibercept or with newer agents, abrolucimab or even faricimab also. But once these polyps bleed or trouble, then you can have massive hemorrhages. So the diagnosis also is generally when there is a large subretinal hemorrhage or large exudation in the macular area. In the absence of any colloid bodies, we start suspecting this could be an IPCV. Previously, ICG angiography was the hallmark in diagnosis, which still I think is a gold standard. But now a lot of criteria on OCT by Girdhar Group and others also have been listed, where you can diagnose IPCV with reasonable sensitivity and specificity also. But I will not be talking of anything about anti-VEGF agents in IPCV. I will be talking of complications which can sometimes happen in a patient of IPCV. Patients sometimes can present with vitreous hemorrhage and submacular hemorrhage. Other causes of submacular hemorrhage include ARMD or a ruptured RAM, retinal artery macroaneurysm. So at the outset, any macular hemorrhage not for retina people but for comprehensive ophthalmologists is not the same. You see, always you should try to see the relationship of hemorrhage with the vessels. In case vessels are overlaying the hemorrhage, then it's an emergency of the eye. It's an ocular emergency, in fact. After trauma, central retinal artery block, I think this is the third emergency which should be addressed on a war footing. And if you cannot see the vessels, that means the retina is behind. That means it's a subhyaloid hemorrhage. And this can be watched or sometimes, operated with reasonably good prognosis. There's no hurry to, intervene in such. But this bottom figure is as I said, ocular emergency. And if prompt action is not taken, then you can have a big macular scar. And the reason it is emergency is that there are a lot of things responsible. Because remember, the hemorrhage is in between the rods and cones and the RPE. So if the hemorrhage is there, fibrin will, contract and destroy the photoreceptors. And iron liberated is also toxic to the circulation there. And also mechanical barrier between mechanical. But the main factor which I think is the contracting clot, which damages photoreceptors and ultimately leads to a scar. And that's the reason aim is that this hemorrhage should move from the macular area to somewhere else. So that is the whole aim of treatment. Because from an important seeing area to a non-seeing area, that is the whole aim of. If it's a very fresh hemorrhage, you could inject some gas and it will move. But by and large, patients present late and becomes a clot. Clot mechanically difficult to displace. So we'll just discuss about how to manage this. If left alone, as I said, irreversible damage primarily because of the damage to the photoreceptors, and that's the whole concept. So I'll describe only 3 scenarios here. One is a small thin hemorrhage like this, which generally OCT picture is very typical here of IPCV, and you can see this amalgam here is the hemorrhage here, which I am pointing with the help of arrows. Such hemorrhages generally do pretty well with anti-VEGF monotherapy, and this is the patient where we have injected 2 injections of aflibercept, and you see doing pretty well. And this is the corresponding OCT at presentation, the bottom figure, and later on after 2 injections. So another patient who has had the presenting vision of 636 and the OCT picture like this, and after 1 injection only, this patient did a response. Meaning thereby if a small hemorrhage, thinner hemorrhage, you can do away with only anti-VEGF. Another example of this patient. One more example, small subretinal hemorrhage here, submacular hemorrhage in fact, and this is the OCT, a dome-shaped OCT, and this above the OCT you see this is the hemorrhage, this area. And after 1 injection, how this has responded. It may require 2 or 3 injections, like in this patient we gave a second injection again, and you see from first, second, third, it has, the hemorrhage part has gone down. So this was scenario number 1, where the hemorrhage is small and thin. Scenario number 2 is something like this. It's occupying a bigger area, it's a thicker hemorrhage. So in this patient, what generally we do is a pneumodisplacement. Pneumo means you inject, pneumo means air or gas inside the eye, and position the patient so that the mechanical effect of gas is to displace. And this is how this patient behaved. Under topical anesthesia, only 0.3 cc of C3F8, along with the aflibercept. Because aflibercept is required because that treats the cause, whereas gas will mechanically do the job. And this was the result of this patient. And after the hemorrhage moved, then we did angiography studies to find out from where the blood came. And if you can identify polyp or some leaking area, then you can laser, so that is the end of the treatment. So here we found this extrafoveal leak, and we lasered with the focal laser. So this was the nutshell at presentation, and after 2 weeks of gas injection, this patient did pretty well. This was another patient who had in the left eye, where pneumodisplacement was done. See, it's a dark colored hemorrhage. So initially I was planning that we will do subretinal TPA, but patient, because it was next day was Sunday, we could not do it. So we just injected gas on the same day, and we saw him, and the gas had done the job. And this is the corresponding OCT. If you see from the lower figure upwards, this patient has done pretty well with the pneumodisplacement. So pneumodisplacement of a subretinal hemorrhage works pretty well in a moderate size hemorrhage, and it's a cost-effective technique because not a lot of consumables are used, and patient generally agrees for treatment pretty fast. But caveat is it should be done pretty early in the course of disease. The last scenario is something like this, which is very, very scary, and it occupies the entire posterior pole. In this patient, possibility of gas working is pretty low unless it's a very fresh hemorrhage. Generally, these hemorrhages are pretty old. So this was a lady who presented like this. Left eye had some evidence of macular degeneration. This was the corresponding ICG, which revealed a polyp in the right eye as well as BVN. Left eye essentially was okay. So we planned for vitrectomy, counseled the patient the need for subretinal TPA. The issue is that subretinal TPA is an expensive injection, costs nearly 18 to 20,000 rupees, and hardly we use 0.05 ml. The rest of the 20 cc goes waste unless there is some other patient. So this was the surgery where a routine pars-plana vitrectomy is done, and then after you have removed the hyaloid face, then what you do is this dual needle, where this is the tricot inserted to take care of the hyaloid, and once the hyaloid goes away, then this syringe, which 23/41, that means the insertion is to 23, but there's a long needle of 41 gauge, where generally where there's such a large massive hemorrhage, we insert at 2-3 locations. One location may not, because I believe there are loculations here which cannot. So this is the second area which we are injecting, subretinal TPA. And after you have done at 2-3 locations, even if some regurgitation occurs, it generally does not matter quite. So after that, you do a air fluid exchange and then come out of it. So this was the pre and post of this patient, immediate post-op period, and 1 minute I'll take here. And this is the long follow-up also. So this is the sequential timeline photograph of right eye, first photo follow-up, then subsequent follow-up. Doing reasonably well, vision recovery also and anatomically also. This was a medical doctor, in fact, who presented with no glow actually, no glow, and on ultrasound we could find some mound in the macular area. So this was the vitrectomy here. You remove the intragel hemorrhage first, uh, which is behind the lens itself, and once this intragel hemorrhage is taken care of, you find on the posterior pole large mounds of black-colored subretinal hemorrhage, and you can see the relationship of vessels with the hemorrhage. It's a large subretinal hemorrhage which will require TPA. So we had counseled this patient that you may require. So again, after this PHF has been taken care of, you poke with the help of needle. There are various ways, either mechanical injection or also you can inject this with the machine also. You see, so as to not to have jerky movements. So this is showing some people combine it with air also, some people combine it with fluorescein, a lot of things have been used. So this was the first post-op day of this patient, and this was the largest follow-up after. Thanks to the health of optic nerve and the macula, this patient recovered excellent 6/6 vision. So had we not acted, on a war footing, this patient would have landed up in hand motions or PLPR kind of vision. So thus to conclude, always remember all macular hemorrhages are not the same, and hemorrhages like this, thin hemorrhages, can be dealt with anti-VEGF alone. Moderate size, you require Nemo displacement plus anti-VEGF, and large size require hyaloid peel, subretinal TPA, gas plus anti-VEGF. Anti-VEGFs are there in all the things because anti-VEGFs have to treat the cause, whereas other things are just mechanical to displace the blood or dissolve the blood. So again, this slide to request you to please join us at APO in first week of April. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.